What's good, y'all? The live stream is back. Back on Facebook for what it's worth. I'm still in their jail a little bit, I guess. But I'm excited to be back. I get to talk about a lot of comic book stuff tonight. So I'm kind of geeked about that. And I do have some current event stuff as well. But we're gonna front load this with comic books because that's what's been popping off. I'm not getting into spoilers. So don't worry about spoiler alerts. The only spoiler I'm gonna give you is this. And I want y'all to lock in on this. I'm gonna say this, and I want y'all to just kind of ride with me on this. I'm not even going to go into what topics we're going to discuss. I'm not even going to preview that. I'm not even going to spoil my own show. But I'm gonna say this. Scott Snyder, if you give me a run on a Hulk, on the Incredible Hulk, my life is yours. Scott Snyder, give me a run on the Hulk and my life is yours. I promise you, bro. I will smite whoever needs to be smote. I'm dead serious about this. Give me a Doctor Strange or a run on the Hulk and you can have my life, bro. Like, I will smite whoever you want me to smite, bro. Like, I am listen. The absolute Joker, the absolute universe Joker is everything I wanted it to be and more. Absolute Batman number 15, bro. Listen. The origin for the Joker is everything. It's everything. Like, I cannot say enough about. The only thing I could say is, and I know I've got the preview and stuff like that. I've seen it probably before you guys have even laid eyes on it. You need to go, like, if you're not reading Absolute Batman, if you don't like Batman as a character and you've been off of Batman books and everything, you need to actually sit down and go and like pick up Absolute Batman and just get into it, because Absolute Batman is my favorite book out right now. But like I said, Scott Snyder, listen, I will smite whoever needs to be smote. If you give me a Hulk run, my life is yours. It's that damn good. And I just need it. And the streets, I've said it this summer. I'm saying it again. The streets require Scott Snyder to touch a Hulk book at some point. Let me put my boy up on the screen, because if you haven't figured it out, off the top of the show, we're going to talk about Absolute Batman and Scott Snyder's reimagining of the Joker. And it's beautiful. Like, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm probably going to have a full breakdown of the book next week. I'm going to actually get a physical copy of it and go through it. I've read it online. But yeah, I'm going to put my boy up on the screen so you can kind of see what I'm talking about in terms of Absolute Joker. And make sure I got the right thing here. Let's see. I think that's it. Yep. You're going to see Absolute Joker. Look at him. Look at him. Just look at him. This is Absolute Joker, y'all. I hate clowns. And this is terrifying. This is nightmare fuel. This is going to haunt my nightmares. But Scott Snyder is absolutely hitting out of the park with Absolute Batman. I cannot say enough. The origin of the Joker matches the tone of the story. It adds a level of menace, because I didn't know how. I thought Bane was terrifying. I thought, as a character, Absolute Bane was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. And the origin of Absolute Joker absolutely is so horrifying. It's so menacing that I think Absolute Joker, they established, I didn't think it was possible, but to establish Absolute Joker as a bigger menace than Absolute Bane is crazy work. And they did it in this book. just the origin story, the way they even kind of tell the story, the narrative device that they use to tell the story, and how Alfred is conveying the absolute level of threat and menace that the Joker, and the air of mystery that surrounds him. And without, it's not spoiling it to say that they, in the Absolute universe, Absolute Joker is literally an analog for the mainstream version of Batman. He has the same kind of background, the world traveling, mysterious origin. We know his entire backstory, but basically for the people that only have a glimpse of the character, if you don't really know the character personally, then his origin is mysterious. Where did he come from? How did he acquire these skills? So Absolute Joker, it checks all the boxes in terms of menace. And I'm absolutely excited to see what they do next. Because if you've been reading the Absolute Batman, the battle against Bane happened a couple weeks ago. The final battle against Bane, and that was brutal in the realest sense of the word. It was brutal, and it was hard to watch, but it brought out the brutal Batman who will do everything just shy of killing you. And that's what happened in the book. But it showed a layer of intelligence that goes along, and strategic thinking that went along with the brutality of that Batman. And so it was a great send off for Bane. It kept him, it took him off the chessboard for a little bit, but kept him in play for a little bit longer. And so we're going to see him again. We're going to, the Absolute universe is going to roll back around to him. But I am really, really excited to see what the other mega villains, like the DC's signature villains, like Lex Luthor. I need to see what kind of demon time that Lex Luthor is on. Because they've introduced him as a character, but they called him as like the nuclear option. So I got to see what bro's on. Because they've already got Ra's al Ghul in Absolute Superman as a pretty terrifying villain in and of himself. And so I'm trying to see what Absolute Lex Luthor is going to be like. Hell, I want to see if there's Absolute Vandal Savage. I would love to see Absolute Vandal Savage. Matter of fact, is it? Let me see. I don't know if he's been introduced or not. I've been getting him because the way that they have Ra's al Ghul depicted, he looks like Vandal Savage in the books to me, in the Absolute version. And so I don't know if they've introduced Absolute Vandal Savage yet. Yeah, Absolute Ra's al Ghul is really kind of Vandal Savage. If we're being honest, that's really how he's depicted. So I want to see what they do if they'd ever introduce an Absolute version of Vandal Savage. I would really be excited to see that. So what I'm saying is this: Absolute Batman, Absolute Joker it surpassed my expectations, because they've been increasing the level of threat each villain that they've introduced. Even Black Mask, and Black Mask was kind of a scary Batman villain, but not like necessarily a direct threat to Batman. He was more a threat to Batman's the kids, essentially, the sidekicks and stuff. The Stephanie Brown thing and stuff like that, but they never really cleanly established him as like this physical threat to Batman. And in Absolute Batman, they made Black Mask a physical threat. Mr. Freeze, the way that they reimagined Mr. Freeze was kind of, excuse the pun, bone chilling. Like he was scary. Absolute Bane absolutely set the bar for how we need to introduce villains from here on out. If we're going to reimagine villains in stories, Absolute Bane kind of set the bar for how we're going to reimagine villains. And Absolute Joker knocks it out of the park. I'm excited to see what they're going to do with this, because he looks like a world ender. And the way they kind of have him as this omnipresent kind of threat is really, really good stuff. So, yeah, I'll be putting my boy back up on the screen, because Absolute Joker you got to lay eyes on. The artwork around him for the solicits is just and people are like, what are they going to do with him? They showed what they're going to do with him, and I'm here for it. Um, I'm really enjoying the run. I'm really enjoying the absolute Batman run. Like, it's reinvigorated my interest in the character, even though it had been waning. And a lot of it has to do with Scott Snyder is one of my favorite Batman writers. Um, I have him as my favorite. Like, I don't have anybody above him. And I've read Batman off and on since like 1988, 89. Actually, I think my earliest Batman book was probably shoot, we're talking about was a team up with Plastic Man and Metamorpho. Like, I was definitely Silver Age Batman. I had a couple Silver Age Batman books, pre-crisis Batman books. But like picking it up as a serious collector, that was late 80s. And I was a kid still, so serious collector is up in the air, but I was a serious consumer of comic books and read them. So the Joker reveal, it felt like it was like they were unveiling something that it was some forbidden knowledge, the way that they framed it. Like, you reading this could put you in danger. Like, you learning about him. They really elevated the sense of menace, where it felt like just learning about him was putting you in physical danger as the reader. And in the universe, they really sold it too. Absolute universe lets Snyder break the toys without really messing up the main continuity. So he gets to just kind of run wild with this and give us all of his best horror stuff, because that's where he comes from. His background is horror. It was that witch book that he wrote as an independent thing. He is a horror writer. And so he's really letting the horror thing go. And that's why I'm saying, because right now we are on the Hulk run. Is it Philip Kennedy Johnson, I think, who's doing Hulk? Where we have Infernal Hulk, and Infernal Hulk is leading into strong horror. And they're bringing in a lot of the old school Marvel monsters back. If you're not familiar, in the 70s, Marvel was really heavy into the horror comic books and the monster comic books and stuff. And so Hulk is really on a strong horror run too. And it started with Immortal Hulk. And now we're into the last Hulk run where he's dealing with the mother of horrors and stuff. And now we are in Infernal Hulk, where it's not even Banner anymore. It's a different Hulk. And so we got to figure out how we're going to do this. But they're bringing back a lot of the monster stuff that you would see with who was Marvel's send up of Conan the Barbarian? Wasn't Khazar. I forgot what the guy's name was. Anyway, so I want to see Scott Snyder get into some horror with Marvel at some point in time. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. DC, this is your blue chip guy. I don't know if you ever need to let him go. But Joker shows up in the book, and he looks like an absolute generational curse. Like, and the way they laid the story out was amazing. The backstory is amazing. The air of mystery. Is it true? Is it not true? And I think they're going to play with this the entire time. What's actually true about him and what's a lie about him. They're going to play with that element through his entire story. And it's really fun. But yeah, he actually feels like a demon. Like, he feels like a demon. Like, this old school, you found the puzzle, you put it back together, and now Pinhead is on your neck kind of level of threat. Like, you looked in the mirror, said Candyman 5 times, and now Candyman is chasing you down. That's the menace that the Joker feels like. Really good. And because Absolute Batman is so huge and he's so physically imposing, you have to ratchet up the level of what can make a man who's almost 500 pounds, almost 7 feet tall, what can be a physical threat to him. And they've been original in it, where it's just not, they're just bigger. Like, there's other elements to it. And it lines up with Scott Snyder, the way that he's kind of played with Joker in the past, where he made him kind of this immortal figure that was always present in Gotham. Even when you do the Court of Owls thing, where Court of Owls was this presence in Gotham City that had been around for a long time. He really seems to have his thumb on the heartbeat of that character. Okay. It makes Gotham feel older and more menacing, but it also makes it feel like something is wrong. And that's been kind of the thread in the Absolute books, where the universe isn't right. the planet isn't right. Wonder Woman's kind of figured that out. Superman has kind of come to that conclusion. Something is wrong with the planet. And what's wrong with the planet is the planet was created in the image of Darkseid. And because it was created in the image of Darkseid, everything is inverted. The superheroes, as opposed to being as opposed to the superheroes being the steady force of justice and the order, because in the main DC universe, superheroes kind of represent the order while the villains represent the chaos. The superheroes are the chaos and the villains are the order, and it feels oppressive. All the books talk about oppression and feeling like you're being oppressed. Absolute Superman, the Lazarus Corp with Absolute Ra's al Ghul, what he's doing in Smallville, where he's basically turned Smallville into an occupied country, and they're dumping occupied city, and they're dumping trillions in to essentially eliminate everybody in Smallville and hold it under siege, just to draw out Absolute Superman. That storytelling is really good. And it makes it feel like there's something wrong with it. And they keep mentioning how wrong this universe is. So I'm enjoying it. And I'm seeing the same thread actually happen in the new Ultimates line, where people are like, this universe is wrong. It's not supposed to be like this. And I guess I do like it. I like that level of self-awareness in these stories that are set in alternate universes, where the characters are aware that something is wrong. And it's not just the fans. So Gotham feels older. Batman really feels outmatched. It's not just physical. Joker is the richest man on the planet. He's essentially Bruce Wayne. He has more money than anybody else on the planet. And so he has unlimited resources. And there is no clear-cut origin story for him. And I don't think that he'll even give one. Okay. But he's a myth that has been in the streets of Gotham that predates Batman and pretty much any other character that's in that book. The design and energy, it feels like they're establishing a folklore that's based in horror, like literal horror. I'm enjoying it, bro. I cannot recommend this book enough. I'm excited about it. It's a comic book that I'm actually excited when it drops, and I'm on the edge of my seat to see what happens next. And typically around this time, we're over a year into it. This is typically when you start feeling that fall off. The energy is still there. It's still fresh and it's still new. Okay. So I'll ask y'all's question and ask your opinion. Does the Joker feel like more of a man or a myth? Like, is he more interesting as a man or a myth? I'm leaning towards the mythic side of it, where you don't quite know where he comes from. But I'll leave that up to you. Do y'all think that this is Snyder's best version of the character? I know that he's still early and we haven't quite seen where it goes, but so far so good. And the last question, do you think Batman is better with a human rogues gallery or more of a supernatural one? I say the existential threat, the world-ending threat kind of villain, where it almost feels like some Lovecraftian thing. For Batman is a really good spin on him. It really forces him to think outside the box. So I'm quite enjoying this book. I really am. And I really hope that you guys pick this up. I'm really hoping that you guys pick this up. Okay. So Absolute Batman must cop. Like, this is an absolute book. This is a book that you absolutely must pick up. Absolutely. All right. On to the next. Again, I said this is comic book stuff tonight, and I'm excited to talk about it. I think I'm gonna stick in some Ask a Dad stuff near the end. But I'm into the comic book stuff right before I get into how fucked are we with the political stuff. So I was thinking, because last week I talked about it, I did kind of a character issues on Hawkman. It was more of a publication history of Hawkman, and just talking about how his character kind of is this narrative black hole for DC, where they can't really, it's hard. They've been struggling to build a continuity around Hawkman for years, and every crisis event kind of breaks Hawkman's continuity. And a lot of it has to do with, You get a new writer in there, they have this, they're like, I got to do something with Hawkman, and then they do something and it kind of breaks what the previous regime did. And Hawkman has been around since before DC was DC Comics. And so he is kind of this character that is kind of a foil for them to tell a cohesive story. So that's what I talked about. I didn't necessarily get into all the other stuff. So with this character issues, we're going to talk about Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, or Chasm. Y'all doing my boy Ben filthy. All right. So we're going to talk about the Clone Saga. And this is probably one of Marvel's most reviled storylines. And the reason why it's reviled is it's kind of what's happening. It's kind of what happened, what I fear with Age of Revelation, where it's going to overstay its welcome in this massive way. Kind of like how Sins of Sinister it was good, but then it just went on it went past the point of being good to where it's an endurance match and you just stopped caring about it. Imagine that for like years. Like years. I think the Clone Saga, if I'm not mistaken, I know the original Clone Saga was like in 1975, and it was like 3 issues and it was done and over with. But the 90s Clone Saga, that did not end. And it broke a lot of Spider-Man followers. Like, it broke a lot of really avid Spider-Man readers, because it just wouldn't stop. It was too much. It went past. It went well past. It lasted 2 years, guys. It was 2 years, and it ended up getting to the point where Spider-Man fans were begging for the Clone Saga to end. And one of the things we did get out of it, because we got the clones out of it. I like Kane. I love Kane. I like Ben Reilly. Like, I'm not mad at the characters that were spawned from the Clone Saga. It was just the Clone Saga itself. And so we're going to talk about my boy Ben Reilly. We're going to put boy up on the screen here. Here's the thing about Ben Reilly. There he is. The fits. Ben Reilly, outside of Miles Morales, Ben Reilly had that shit on. Like, he was the best designed Spider-Man. His costumes always are incredible. And I'm not saying that just out the blue. Ben Reilly was always, in my mind, in my estimation, he was always the better dressed Spider-Man. Now when Miles came along, Miles kind of elevated and gave it a little bit of flavor. But up until that point, Ben Reilly's suits, like, they were way better than Peter's. I mean, I like the design of the black suit personally. And so I like that version of Spider-Man. But I have yet to see anything that beats some of the stuff that Ben Reilly is putting on. And I don't have enough images of him downloaded to show. But like I said, he was kind of my favorite design of the character of Spider-Man. Okay. So who is Ben Reilly, really? He is the clone that was not supposed to exist. In the 90s, they were going to retire or sunset Peter Parker, or at least put him out to pasture for a while. And that's when they introduced Ben. And there was all this, who done it, and all this other stuff around who's the real Spider-Man and who's the clone. And forgive me, as a traumatic experience reading the Clone Saga, I'm trying to remember the mechanism, because I don't have it in front of me. I have the books somewhere in this basement around here, but trying to remember the mechanism by which they determined initially that Ben was the original original Peter Parker, and Peter was the clone, and then they flipped it. But he was a clone that wasn't supposed to exist. He earned being Spider-Man twice, and he had to build a personality for Spider-Man. He had to build a personality for himself. With memories that weren't really his. And this Spider-Man should have been a parallel evolution, not just a spare part. I feel like Ben is probably one of the most misused main characters in the Spider-Man universe. There's a couple out there that I feel like are kind of misused, but I feel like Ben Reilly gets the short end of the stick just because he's coming out of the Clone Saga, and a lot of people did not like the Clone Saga. And like I said, it wasn't the fact they didn't like it. It just went on too long. It would not stop. And I don't think y'all understand when I say it would not stop. Like when we were doing, when X-Men were in the age of Krakoa, right? It was long. It was long, but at least the stories were engaging and they kind of moved the story forward. And I'll probably do a breakdown of the Clone Saga. Like I'll probably dedicate an entire show to the breakdown of the Clone Saga. The problem with the Clone Saga is it ran too long. It contradicted itself multiple times, and they never ironed it out. And then when the fans were sick enough of it, they just pulled the plug on it and just said, let's just get this thing over with. And it left everybody just completely unsatisfied with the ending of it. Okay. I think Ben Reilly is the perfect autistic coded Spider-Man. And I think there's a lot of leg room for that character in the way that we discuss neurodivergence now. This autistic ADHD Spider-Man, I think he fits perfectly in universe. And Marvel really refuses to actually fully commit to that version, but it exists in the way that he's been presented and written. And I think that he would be a good representative and a good juxtaposition where he's not just a duplication of Spider-Man. Because right now, I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna keep it 100. I'm gonna keep 100 with you. This is bullshit, and the costume is fire, but Chasm is bullshit. The way that they got Chasm out here, it feels like they have Ben Reilly and Madeline Pryor, and they just had to have something to do with Limbo, and the costume is fire. Again, par excellence. It's par for the course with him. Ben Reilly has that shit on. But the problem is the costume design is amazing, but they are just playing with Ben Reilly at this point. And I feel like they're wasting the potential momentum of this character. I know how to resolve this. I'll talk about that later on. But this fire. This representation of Ben Reilly, the one that you remember, the Scarlet Spider, the one that became the Scarlet Spider, the clone Spider-Man. This is good. This is trash. And this is what Marvel currently has him at, is this. I don't like this. This is trash. I feel like they just have Chasm there just as a placeholder because they don't have anything for him. And so I'm gonna talk about that. What my possible solution to have Peter Parker and Ben Reilly coexist without him being a weird, ambiguous villain with green blasty powers, because that seems to be the default. Like when you don't have any idea for what to do with the hero, you just make him into a dark version of himself who has green blasty powers or blue blasty powers. It's the old DC Cinematic Universe school of making a villain. We're going to make him glowy and we're going to give him blasty powers, and the blasty powers are going to be color coded. So it's going to be green or blue. And so, yeah, I think, for me, I think we have to do something better with him. We need to do right by him because there's so much there with the character. And like I said, an autistic coded Spider-Man, bro, there's all kinds of stories that we can write, because here's what I'm saying. The way Ben Reilly was kind of conceived, he has to cobble together a personality, cobble together memories. He's not a one-for-one translation or a duplicate of Peter Parker in the physicality. He is with his powers and everything, but from his mind, he has to put together who he is, and he doesn't understand a lot of nuance. He doesn't read between the lines. He still can be funny, but he's more blunt. He's more direct. So we're going to get into a little bit of the publication history. Of course, 1975, the original Clone Saga introduced Peter's clone, created by the Jackal, which is another one of those seemingly throwaway Spider-Man villains, who really shouldn't be thrown away. I mean, they've made him such a centerpiece of the story, but they just kind of keep putting him out to pasture every couple of years. And then they bring him back. And every time they bring him back, it's confusing and kind of fucked up. And you just don't really engage with it. I feel like they need to do something, either kill him off or do something interesting with him. But they introduced the Jackal, and he created the clones and everything. And the clone pretty much dies immediately in the comic. Like, just 1975 Clone Saga, we're going to leave this at a couple of issues and we're done. Okay. Then for some reason, Marvel was kind of scraping for stories. And in 1994, they kind of brought this back. Ben returns. He's older and he's wandering. And he's kind of a blank slate of a Spider-Man. And he kind of becomes Scarlet Spider in Web of Spider-Man number 18. And for a moment, Marvel actually let him be the mainline Spider-Man. And it was interesting. Now, there was fan outrage, but here's the thing. There was something going on in the 90s where there was like this fever that gripped the comic book industry where we have to kill or debilitate all of our mainline heroes. And so we killed Superman, we broke Batman's back, and we sunset Spider-Man, or sunset Peter Parker for a while. And eventually Superman did come back. Batman comes back after the entire John Paul Valley Azazel thing. And I still don't know what happened to Azazel. I still don't know what they really did with John Paul Valley. I think they killed him and brought him back or whatever. But DC collectively pretends that he doesn't exist. We don't see no retellings of him, no reinventions of him, no nothing. Dude is just gone. And Spider-Man with Ben Reilly and Kane was the other clone. And then was Doppelganger, like, I can't remember, was Doppelganger considered one of the clones? I think he was. So anyway, Ben returns older. He doesn't really have an identity. He has to cobble together one. And they let him be Spider-Man. And so Ben Reilly Spider-Man era starts in 96. The sensational Spider-Man number 0. And he has a brand new suit, brand new start. For a brief run, he is Spider-Man. He has kind of tonalities a little bit different. He's written a little bit different than Peter. And I rocks with it. Like, I kind of enjoyed having a different vantage point of that character. But he did do it. And then Marvel doing the Marvel thing. We're going to, since trauma has to happen to Peter, his brother is going to die in his arms. And the body degrades, and then it reveals that he was the clone. And the trauma shapes everything thereafter, at least for a little bit. And then we're going to bring him back. They've brought Ben back and killed him plenty of times. And they keep bringing him back to kill him. And never really give him anything to kind of sink his teeth into as a character. Dies and resurrects, dies and resurrects, dies and resurrects. And they've kind of used trauma to shape him into this morally fractured kind of character. They don't really have to do that. If you're a clone and you're born with the template of a memory of somebody that already exists, you are already fucked up. And so we don't need to inflict more mental trauma on you to make you an interesting character. You're an interesting character in and of itself. Okay. The Vegas era, the Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider, that was 2017. I messed with that book. That book was kind of dope. It's the first time Marvel actually allowed him to really establish himself as a standalone character in the Spider-Man universe. For any amount of time, where it's like a serious push, like you're not having to worry about him dying or anything. Which writers do you think handle? Shoot, let me pull it up because I have it laid out. I have it in my outline here. I would say for me, and I got to figure out I can't remember who the writer is off the top of my head. I liked when they brought him back when he is kind of the Vegas Spider-Man, the 2017. So I need to see who was actually writing the book back then. So let me pull it up because I want to be actually accurate here. Vegas. Writer. I need to see who was writing the book back then. So that was Peter David, one of the goats. Who else do you trust for that, man? I mean, I think Peter David wrote one of my favorite versions of the Hulk, and I think he kind of understands characters in a way that um where there's some nuance and some layer to it, especially when it's psychologically complex characters. Peter David kind of had a knack for writing them and making them interesting without making them feel like cliches. Um, and so I would say the more recent version of it, because I've been a Ben Reilly, my mark for Ben Reilly for a long time, but I think the most recent bringing him back outside of this chasm bullshit, because this is bullshit. But when they brought him back and kind of gave him his own city to do his own thing, and you would see like he would cross over with Kane and stuff, I like that side of it. Okay. But yeah, they gave him space to grow. And then since good things can't last, since good things cannot last, and I cannot have a comic book that I enjoy for more than a certain number of years, we're gonna do the dark web thing, whatever the hell that was, whatever dark web was. And I need somebody, if somebody wants to jump in the stream and explain to me what dark web was, I would absolutely love it, because I don't know what the hell this is. It gave us Chasm, and I know it was Ben Reilly and Madeline Pryor, and it was kind of a crossover with what was going on in the X books, but not really. It was terrible, and I actually checked out. Like, I was kind of frustrated with the direction that they were taking with the character, and I kind of checked out. Like, I felt like it was kind of betrayal. So he lost his memories. He snaps. He becomes a villain. He's infused with limbo powers somehow. And this is just Marvel saying, we don't know what the fuck to do with him. And so we're just going to have him here. And Marvel does that in the Spider-Man universe a lot. Like, they'll introduce another potential member of the Spider-Man family and then just kind of forget about him. Like, just kind of say, hey, we forgot about you. Like Silk. Where Silk, just Cindy Moon just pops up here and there, and then we just forget about she exists for a while, and then she's back. And they keep doing this in and out of the Spider-Man universe and stuff. And I think that's kind of what happened with Ben. I think he kind of fell victim to Marvel's editorial. We don't have anything for him. He is a known property. He's a known character. But since we don't have anything for him, we're just going to make him a random villain that's tied in with one of our flagship books. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Here every Tuesday and possibly Wednesday, depending on what my kids got going on. So that's kind of where I'm at with Ben Reilly, and I feel like Marvel is it's a betrayal of the character moving forward, because I think he's a fantastic character. We just need to build around him. Like I said, we have this autistic coded Spider-Man who can represent characters on the spectrum and show that, you know, people that are neurodivergent aren't like Rain Man stereotypes or anything. We can have depth and layers, and we can have relationships, and we can be quippy and funny and stuff. Our brain just functions a little bit differently, and I fuck with that. So let's get into what his physical powers are. So he has the entire Spider-Man package, right? Strength, agility, reflexes, stamina, above average durability, spider sense, wall crawling, superhuman recovery. He's durable but not quite bulletproof. But he also has a small healing factor, superhuman speed, relative to his physiology and stuff. Like, there's specific elements of Spider-Man that he has. Some things that made him unique is the way that he applied his tech. This is where we first saw the impact webbing, which was a good use of it. Web stingers, the external, like the design was dope, where he had the web shooters on the outside of his costume, and his costume made sense. Like, it made sense. Like, he has a hoodie on. He's outside swinging around on rooftops. It's cold up there, so he has a hoodie on. Okay. And like I said, because Marvel can't not fix things until they're broken, now we have Chasm's powers. I need to actually pull up what Chasm's powers are, so I am not doing an injustice to this character. because the chasm, like I said, I checked out so hard on chasm that I just kind of, I can't front. I checked out on it, and so I didn't even really follow up. And so I had to do a lot of catching up on what they've been doing with him, because as soon as I saw it and saw that they're like, oh, we're making him a random Spider-Man villain who's angsty and mad at Peter for some reason, I checked out. Because why? If they don't care, why should I care? Truly, if they don't care, why should I care? So I'm actually in the wiki, and typically I don't always go to the Marvel wiki because it's not always 100% accurate. I still have I'm still mad at them for telling me that I'm still mad at the Marvel wiki for telling me that Hawkeye is a better hand-to-hand combatant than Captain America. Like that's trash. Okay, so let's pull it up here. Superhuman strength. I need to see what his chasm abilities are. Immune to, he's also, yeah, he was immune to spiders. Spider-Man sense, web sense. Where is Walcry Island? Psycho radioactive goo. So he can make light weapons. While psionic webbing could be really an interesting power set for a Spider-Man character, no. Psychoactive goo sucks. And that is a terrible way. Like the wiki just kind of gave up. It said he was exposed to psychoactive goo. He learned new abilities such as forging solid light weapons of his own and emanating his own energy during his fight with Peter. They gave him green blasty powers. With all else fails, give the character, if we're gonna make this guy a villain, all else fails, give him green blasty powers. Because what else are you gonna do? We're gonna make him an evil Green Lantern analog who's Spider-Man. Oh my God. Ugh. Anyway, I'm not dwelling on that. I think Ben works best when he's not grounded, or we don't have any mystical magical, or when he's grounded where he's not mystical magical, none of this demonic BS, and not necessarily adjacent with the X-Men books. I feel like you can fold him in, kind of like how Peter is kind of welcomed into the fold. Storm hates his guts, but it is what it is. Where he's street level, but he also, like, you could tell that he's not Spider-Man. He's dressed in the costume, but it's a different guy. So this is where I kind of connect to where Ben, I connect and resonate with Ben. His entire existence is imposter syndrome. Like, is a physical embodiment of imposter syndrome. He's born without an identity. And he has big shoes to follow. He has big shoes to fit in because of Peter. Like, Peter represents big shoes that Ben Reilly has to fit. And he doesn't quite have a frame of reference. Like, he didn't experience a childhood. He didn't experience a lot of the regular developmental milestones that a human being has in terms of developing cognition and stuff. And so the way his mind works, he is a super literal thinker. He's a lot easier to manipulate. He's just as intelligent, but he's also easier to manipulate than Peter. He never really learned social nuance and stuff. And he had to build a personality from scratch. And his relationship to humanity isn't really forged by his upbringing. It's forged by his, like, car crashes into interacting with regular humans. Okay? The perfect neurodivergent coded Spider-Man. Like, it's not hard to do, like, guys, and all you gotta do is plant your flag down and say, this is what we're gonna do with the character. Okay. So why it fits perfectly. The abridged childhood equals literal processing. He isn't really able to pick up on it. Sometimes I struggle when somebody is being sarcastic. I have to actually hold myself and think for a second. Are they really being literal? Do they really mean that? And sometimes it takes a lot longer than other times. Okay. He learned language cognitively, not socially. So he didn't really have a childhood. He kind of inherited the childhood. And so um, sarcasm doesn't necessarily land the same with him. He kind of processes metaphors literally. Um, and he is kind of governed through a cold, there's a layer of cold logic that kind of a lot that locks into this character. And you could see it the way that he interacts and the way that he makes his determinations and judgments in the field. Um, he has a cold logic to him. He has a very dry, deadpan sense of humor, where it's different than Peter's, where it's meant to, get a laugh every once in a while from the audience and stuff. Peter's witty because he's always improvising and he's trying to mask the fact that he's terrified. Ben's witty because he is saying exactly what's coming and what exactly was crossing his mind, and some of the absurdities of what he's actually engaging with when you're fighting supervillains. Because imagine if you are a neurodivergent person who is a superhero who's fighting supervillains and some of the absurd shit that actually happens. That's what Ben's kind of reacting to. Okay. This is representation without actually leading into tropes. Okay. And it would be dope, Marvel, if you hired a neurodivergent writer or creator to actually write Ben Reilly so we can get him right. Because you have him coded the right way. And I'm not trying to force it or anything, but just look at how he's written. That's maybe one of the reasons why I resonate with him so much as a character. Okay. Because he's awkward. And it's not nerd awkward. It's awkward. I don't understand how you humans interact with one another kind of awkward that I experience sometimes. Okay. Trauma, identity dysphoria, neurodivergent emotional wiring. Okay. The repeated deaths during the Clone Saga, like you're telling me that didn't impact him in a way that changes his developmental milestones. It breaks his brain, and it's not in a villain way. It's my executive function is kind of duct taped together and cobbled together and slapped together, and that's what it would do to you. Like if you're Ben, his executive function is slapped together, and it makes it even more amazing that he's able to go out and save people. Okay. So let's talk about it. And some of this stuff is in the narrative. Some of this stuff is just stuff that I've kind of extrapolated from reading the books, and the character and the way I would frame it. Because when I do character issues, I look at it from my goal. I've always wanted to write for Marvel. Like I know it's not the best pay in the world, and you got to deal with some other stuff that goes along with it. But that was always my dream life. And so when I did character issues, when I first started this and started writing these things, I would always look at the characters and how I, as the writer, as the creator, what nuances I would add. And I try to be very careful about not dogging out specific writers, because I know everybody's creative process is different. And I know in the grand scheme of things, they've achieved something that I have not, which is writing for a major comic book company. But when I do these, I always try to, how would I make the character better? How would I change to make them feel like they resonate better to me? It's a personal thing. So for me, Ben is the meticulous planning Spider-Man, the one who kind of breaks all the problems into pieces. Where Peter is kind of like this. I almost want to say reactive kind of genius, where his genius kind of manifests spontaneously. I would like Ben Reilly's to be a little bit more planned. Where there is where he has to figure things out. He does need rules. Like he has to enforce, like he has to have written rules for himself, and he needs job parameters. And where he obsesses about missions, because Peter does obsess about missions too. Like that's why Peter's life is in the comic books is constantly kind of a wreck, because the missions kind of take over. But I'm talking about all the other stuff that goes along with the mission, not just the action. I'm talking about the sleuthing and everything, where Ben will absolutely go MIA for days on end while he's following a case. Not just because he's fighting the villain, but because he's actually figuring things out. The Spider-Man that's blunt and doesn't like ambiguity. I like that. Autistic coded, elegant, respectful. It's already visible in how he's been written, y'all. Okay. This is how Marvel keeps misusing my boy. They treat him as disposable. This chasm thing, like it. Ugh. Matter of fact, I'm getting it off my screen. I can't even look at it anymore. There's my boy, right there. They keep treating him as like this disposable character that we can just yank in and out of stories. We can just pull him in and then toss him to put him on the trash bin until we need him again. And he's treated as disposable. They treat him as like a walking plot twist. When do we need to turn things askew? Let's just throw Ben in the mix. They turn a villain or insidious every single time they can't figure out what the fuck to do with him. And it's corruption instead of character development. Like this chasm thing is a shining example of it. He's corrupted now and he's mad. I don't know why. And they keep shoving him back into Peter's shadow instead of giving him a home. I think that we need to have a kind of a where we establish him outside. Like the Vegas run was perfect. And something about Peter David in Vegas. I don't know if he lived in Vegas, but a lot of his stories always spun back to Vegas. Because one of his Spider-Man stories when Spider-Man's hanging out with this was recent, where Spider-Man's hanging out with the Gray Hulk and they're in Vegas for some reason. Anyway, Marvel's logic, their mistake, they just keep they don't want to stabilize him. They don't want to give him his own thing. Okay. So this is how we fix Ben. This is how we fix Ben Reilly, in my mind. I say we get him out of New York because we got Spider-Man, who's kind of Spider-Man of Queens. We got Peter's the Spider-Man of Queens. Miles, who's the Spider-Man of Brooklyn. I almost feel like we need to move him out of Spider-Man, out of Peter's ecosystem and kind of leave their crossovers for when like Ben's in town or something. But I say, let's, if we're doing Vegas, we can do Vegas. I say we can make him the Los Angeles Spider-Man. Marvel hasn't really messed with Los Angeles a heck of a whole lot. Let's do that. Let's put, the Los Angeles West Coast Spider-Man. And he has to kind of establish himself and he has to deal with all the other sides of Hollywood and the glitz and glamour and all the other stuff that comes with being a superhero in LA adjacent to the entertainment industry. There's a lot of stories we can tell there. Okay. Or Houston Spider-Man or Chicago Spider-Man, another major city in the Marvel universe where he can be Spider-Man. Okay. Not New York. Get him out of New York. Because when he goes to New York, they end up overshadowing him and shit canning him. Okay. The other cities work because there's different cultural rhythms in there. There's space for new rogues, and the new rogues for Ben don't have to be one-for-one translations where he has his own Dr. Octopus, but you can make a character that's kind of like his Dr. Octopus, or kind of like his Vulture. It doesn't have to be one-for-one translations. You can kind of do what you've been doing in the Miles Spider-Man and Miles Morales Spider-Man, where you give him some very unique rogues that will cross over occasionally. Okay. Give him new community ties and a new kind of his own supporting cast that actually is consistent, where they just don't fucking disappear for no reason. Okay. And give him because giving him his own city allows him to kind of dictate what kind of Spider-Man he's going to be. And I know he's not going to be Spider-Man. He's probably going to be Scarlet Spider somewhere else. I don't know if Kane is still doing Scarlet Spider. I got to double check. But we can give him something else and allow him to kind of grow into his own Spider-Man, where he comes up with his own way that he fights crime based on his neurodivergence. I would mess with that. Like I would 100% buy that book. Okay. Build a rogues gallery around his challenges, not Peter's villains, bro, but villains themed around distortion and miscommunication and gaslighting and identity theft. And Peter has those. I'm not going to like Mysterio's kind of distortion. He's also kind of gaslighting. Chameleon could be identity theft, but then ambiguity as a weapon, sensory overload, villains who exploit literal thinkers, where you have con men, where he has to deal with his own iteration. Maybe you could even make him fight the Purple Man like that. That could be a nemesis for a Ben Reilly Spider-Man. Okay. It's a perfect foil for this type of enemy because they keep him grounded and they keep him aged up where he doesn't revert to being a child. That's one of the things that we keep running into with Spider-Man books, where the writers have to constantly show us that Peter Parker is this irresponsible, irresponsible man boy who never grows up. And it's kind of dope that the Spider-Man, where now he's kind of with the Guardian, like he has his version of the Guardians of the Galaxy. He actually got called out for that, which is kind of interesting with his new suit. If you're not following the current Spider-Man, he's in outer space. He just got finished with a couple of missions with Rocket Raccoon, and he has his own crew of outcasts that he's leading in space missions. And his suit is the Technocrat. What is that? Cypher, Warlock. It's kind of like Warlock species. The same, not Adam Warlock, but Warlock from Doug, that X-Men Warlock. And so he has one of those, I think it's phalanx, but not really. But it's a suit that has its own sentience. It's a biomechanical suit. And it called him out for a lot of his piss poor thinking, which was dope. I was shocked. But anyway, back to Ben. He gives him a different perspective. He's not jokey like Peter, but he has a really dry sense of humor. Okay, where the jokes only got to be funny to him. It doesn't have to be funny to you. It doesn't have to be funny to villains. It's just got to crack him up. He's not grim, but he's dry, literal, quietly funny, and he's way too blunt and way too honest. Okay, and let the chasm shit go. Please, my God, let it go. If we have to have an exorcist, if we have to have Brother Voodoo or Doctor Strange or Clea show up and do an exorcism on Chasm, and it's revealed that one of Madeline Pryor's demons took over Chasm's body, please, God, do that. Get rid of this Chasm thing completely and totally. If we're going to do psionic webbing and stuff, that could be something in and of itself. Do not do this Chasm thing. It didn't make any sense when y'all introduced it. It was just, we needed something for him to do. We needed another foil with Madeline Pryor. Please, God, get rid of the Chasm thing. Bury it. I'm fine with y'all pretending like it didn't happen. Okay? Have exorcism come through, and that's it. Okay? He isn't a villain. He isn't corrupted. He's not man. He's trying to build his identity, and he doesn't have the same kind of. He experiences the world differently, and so it makes it harder for him, especially since he doesn't have the formative years to learn how people interact socially. Okay, reframe him as the neurodivergent Spider-Man, the autistic ADHD coded Spider-Man, and he's not quirky, he's not broken, he's not the clone. He's Ben. That's all I'm asking. Hero that processes the world a little bit differently, who has the internal monologue that shows how he struggles sometimes with human interaction sometimes. Okay. He interprets communication differently. Maybe you could even give him a quirk that one of my quirks is I tend to interrupt people, and I'm not being disrespectful. That's just how my mind fires off ideas, and I can't always shut it down. Sometimes I'm not even aware that I'm talking. Yeah. He fights differently. Where it's not the damn near going to kill you kind of fighting that Kane does, but he is a little bit less protective of his rogues and his villains. And he solves problems differently. It's not the intuitive kind of genius, it's a planning kind of genius. And where it's piece by piece. And it's not because I know I'm not saying Peter doesn't plan, he doesn't make plans for people, but a lot of stuff Peter does is improvised. It's on the fly. And I would say Ben has that, but don't make that his defining feature of genius. Make him be the one, the Spider-Man that plans. Okay. And this presents a neurotype that a lot of people can identify with. And I think you would find a new audience for Ben. Okay. That's a Spider-Man they never given us. You've done a lot of Marvel's done, and now I'm kind of riffing because I'm off my script here. Marvel's done a lot of weird bullshit to try to say we're making Peter Parker relatable. Like they've done a lot of shit to try to say we're making Peter Parker a relatable character, and they've done everything except make him a relatable character. You know, um, I think they have a chance to get it right with Ben. They've got it right with Miles. Miles is kind of a relatable Spider-Man. I think what Marvel keeps fumbling with is, and it doesn't align, like the way that they've done Peter Parker editorially, where he's not allowed to be married because some editor somewhere thought that him being married aged him up too fast, and we can't tell interesting stories with him and Mary Jane. It was a short-sighted thing, and making him this eternal bachelor / man-child thing without an anchor like Mary Jane Watson, to me that makes him unrelatable. Spider-Man found his actual one that holds him down, and they keep removing her from his universe. You would need, if you're a Peter Parker, and now I'm off of Ben, but I'm talking about Peter. If you're a Peter Parker, as an adult, you would need people that stick by you thick and thin and understand your flakiness. And they had it with Mary Jane, but for whatever reason, Marvel's editorial team will not let them be married. And they think that makes him relatable, and it really doesn't. You have a super genius. I've said this before. You have a super genius who didn't have the resources like Tony Stark or Reed Richards and stuff, or even a Victor Von Doom. You have a super genius who hobnobs with the richest and most powerful people on the planet. And he hasn't said, hey, can you help me develop a patent or something so I can finance this stuff so I'm not struggling to make my rent at the end of the month? Hey, Tony, Professor X, you guys are independently wealthy. I don't know if Tony is anymore, but how about you give me a grant, write me a grant or something off the books, write me a grant or something so that I could keep Norman Osborn from conquering the US again. Because last time we took the eye off the ball with Norman Osborn, he essentially conquered the entire US and took over S.H.I.E.L.D. And so I'm the one who normally keeps him in check and prevents that. For whatever reason, you guys just can't handle him. So write me a grant and I'm yours. I got him. Like, we're telling me that Peter can't do that. And so I think in Marvel's attempt to make him relatable, they made him unrelatable. The most relatable older version of Peter Parker was in the Spider-Man movie with Miles Morales. Like, that was the one with the baby. The Peter Parker with the baby. That was a relatable version of Spider-Man. And so I would opt towards that as opposed to this fake thing. And so you have a chance with Ben Reilly to make an actual relatable version of Spider-Man in the same vein that Miles Morales is a relatable version. And not force it. So that's what I got on that end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, I love the character, and I think we could really do something with Ben Reilly. And maybe I could do another character issues on Kane, because I mess with the clones, bro. Like, I like the clones, and I like the fact that they are basically Peter Parker with different personalities. Kane being the bloodlusted, I don't give a fuck kind of Spider-Man was dope, where we have this unhinged kind of Spider-Man. I mean, if we're being real, the way that I could kind of see Kane as Spider-Man is how they had Miguel O'Hara in the Spider-Verse movies. Like, that's how I see, where it's like the ruthless, anything by any means necessary kind of Spider-Man. I would probably do another character issues if we're going to cover all the clones. I'll do one on Kane, and see how we can improve him. But I think that Ben Reilly is your perfect autistic coded Spider-Man. And it's not me making this up. This is how they presented his character. I'm just saying it. Why not lean all the way into it and give people a comic book character they can relate to, as opposed to these stereotypes of neurodivergent people that we tend to allow propagate our media, where there's so many neurodivergent people who are in creative roles in this country, but still the accepted way that we present people that have ADHD or people that are autistic and stuff like that, the way that we present them is just basic stereotypes, as opposed to nuanced characters and nuanced people with depth. I think Ben Reilly's your perfect guy to do that. I think you can do something with that. Anyway, on to the next. So far we've gotten Read Absolute Batman. Absolute Joker is amazing. Like, Absolute Joker is amazing. And if Scott Snyder ever decided to come over to Marvel and write the Hulk, I give my life to him. I will smite whoever needs to be smote to see Scott Snyder extended Scott Snyder Hulk run that dives deep into the horror side of it, because they're doing it with Hulk right now, and it's kind of interesting. I was on the fence when they introduced the eldest and mother of horrors and all the other stuff in the recent run of Hulk that just ended, but I'm all in on Infernal Hulk, bro. I want to see what happens with that. Okay, so we've done the comic book stuff. I've gotten that out of the way, and so now we're about to lean in to piss some of y'all off. This is a little section called "How fucked are we?" It's my current events kind of section. Here's the thing. For those that don't know, if you're first time meeting me or being introduced to me, I went to college. I was a journalism major with a minor in political science, and I spent 4 years as a journalism student, and my entire goal initially was I was going to write for a hip hop publication. And before hip hop journalism got cooked, that was my plan. But in like I said, my academic was started out as construction engineering major, transferred over to journalism in my first year, stuck with that, worked with the radio station, journalism, minor in sociology, raft of political science and abnormal psychology courses. I was preparing for something. Okay. And so one of the things I'm nerdy about is current events and politics. And so that's kind of one of my hyper fixations on things. All right. And so as a result, my shows are always going to have a political theme. Like, we're always going to talk about what's going on in the world. I'm not going to shy away from it. Now, I have opinions, and if you don't fuck with the opinions, then that's all right. You can always get your own live stream and talk about what your opinions are on your live stream. All right. So, how fucked are we? Right now, and one of my things I did in my old life, I ran group homes and whatnot, and I used to get kids that were gang involved, and it includes white nationalist gangs. I used to get little white nationalists in my house all the time. I've seen enough white nationalist tattoos to know that the ones that I see on the arms of some of these ICE agents, those are authentic. Like, that's real. And so what we're seeing is, and now we're dealing in the kind of theory crafting. We were dealing with a lot of very visible white nationalist groups after the last administration, especially after January 6th. And then all the stuff afterwards, like the white nationalist gangs and stuff were out there. And when I say white nationalist gangs, I don't want y'all to get it twisted. There's a lot of black and brown. There are a lot of brown folks who are aligned and adjacent with white nationalist gangs. And for black folks, and I'm gonna get into the Uncle Ruckus archetype, how he's not just a caricature, he's a demographic. We know that there are black and brown folks who don't fuck with black and brown folks, and they align themselves with anybody that hates black and brown folks the same way they do. And so we talk about white nationalist gangs. They're not always exclusively white or nationalist, and they found that was good branding. Gives them an ability to say, well, we're not racist. We got standard brown skinned guy over here, and he agrees with us, right? You better. Yeah. There's a lot of us, and we all rode together. You better agree with us. So when I say white nationalist gang, it's not exclusively white. Now we start getting into stuff like the Klan and things like that. Neo-Nazis, yeah. There are some white nationalist. There's that white limitation, but even there are Nazis who, if you go to South America, there are not Latin Nazis and stuff. It's weird. Racism is weird. It doesn't make any sense, y'all. Especially anti-black racism. Anti-black racism is one of the craziest pieces of work that you're ever going to find in this. The logic baffles. So I've been seeing ICE agents behaving in ways that resemble a lot of how these white nationalists operate. And one of the things is, what better place would be for, if you're a white nationalist who you've been in the spotlight, you have, and one of the things is, a lot of these groups don't necessarily, they'll take the platform, but they don't necessarily want to be necessarily identified with the platform, because what comes with that level of public knowledge also comes federal scrutiny. At least in previous administrations, it kind of did. If you can get paid to fuck up immigrants and patrol neighborhoods of marginalized people and go after all the people you don't want in your country, who wouldn't take that up? I've seen so many ICE agents with like white militia tattoos and stuff like that on their arms, and then they mask up so you can't necessarily cleanly identify them or check them. Okay. So there's overlap is what I'm saying. Well, we do know, and a lot, like I said, this is speculation, but it's theory crafting, and so you're going to follow along with me, or you're not going to follow along with me. I don't give a fuck. So we've seen multiple ICE personnel caught with white supremacist affiliations. ICE recruitment materials use a lot of terminology that's linked to some of these groups. Chrissy Nome came out the other day and said they are greenlighting anybody that, if they anything that would have been exclusionary criteria for law enforcement in most cases in a reasonable and sane country. Now, some places they don't care. Some regions of the country they don't necessarily care. But for federal law enforcement, it would have been kind of disqualifying to be affiliated with white supremacist gangs or stuff. They're waiving all that stuff. They're waiving criminal records. They're waiving all that stuff to get bodies in. And so a lot of these, in my estimation, a lot of these people that were super active in that militia white national separatist world now are getting paid to do the work that they've always wanted to do. It's like if Marvel came to me and said, "Hey, Brian, we're going to let you write a theme of our own line of black characters." Boy, how much? $50,000. I'm in. I don't care if that's not enough. I don't care. I'm in. Pay my bills. That's all I care about. I get to do what I love and get paid for it. Let's go. And so I think that's kind of what we're seeing with these ICE people. And so the recruitment materials use terminology linked to extremist groups. DHS internal reports are acknowledging the risks of extremist infiltration. Like, this was a risk that they identified, Department of Homeland Security. And militia groups are openly trying to recruit law enforcement and military. I'm not going to necessarily say what cops I know in where I'm at that have like neo-Nazi tattoos, but they exist. I mean, in my town, we got a neo-Nazi outpost that sells guns and stuff, and a lot of cops mess with it. And they'll try to pretend like, oh yeah, man, it's not neo-Nazis, but we know, like, I mean, got 1488 slapped all over everything. You know, all kinds of Nazi terminology and stuff and neo-Nazi stuff. If you're paying attention, you know what this stuff is. There's no reason to have 1488 slapped on everything. You could say it's a call sign, but we also know that it also, the numbers have some they line up with Nazi symbolism. I might have been born yesterday, but I stayed up all night, y'all. So what we don't know, there's no transparency about how widespread this is. I'm imagining that if you're a white nationalist who wants to go hurt, if you want to go hurt immigrants and people of color, and ICE ain't doing background checks, I mean, I would say this is pretty straight. The calculus is pretty straightforward on this. Okay. Agencies tend to stonewall journalists because they're not going to disclose how many bigots they let in. And we're in that few bad apples is always kind of the issues. Well, you're always going to have a few bad apples. You're always going to have violent racist extremists whenever you cast it at this big. Ridiculous. Why this matters for black folks. Specifically, because the surges we're seeing are in, and a lot of times when we have marginalized communities, we tend to live adjacent to one another. The way cities are laid out and everything. And we're already starting to see, like, and I got into it with some ADOS or ADOS, African descendant slaves, ADOS ADOS guy online basically said we were fear mongering and stuff like that, bro. Here's the reality, bro. ICE agents don't need to be able, like, they may not be able to necessarily arrest Black Americans, but they can absolutely detain us. And a lot of Black people have not survived detention, but law enforcement. And especially if you have law enforcement that is may have ties to white supremacist groups, that makes it an extremely dubious position to be in. If you're being detained for questions. And since we don't really care about due process anymore, they can hold you for an indefinite amount of time. They can just disappear you. We've already had it where in Chicago they had to shut down, and this was years and years ago. This wasn't even having anything to do with ICE. This was the Chicago police. And I could post the article if you guys want to see it. The Chicago police basically were running a off the books site to take people and torture them. And there's a number of people that got disappeared off to that site, and they would get tortured into confessions. So this is not new ground for our law enforcement, locally or federally. And so if you guys want the links, I can bring the evidence. Like, we can do that on a subsequent show, because I can talk about that one. But the danger that this puts communities in, and this is a couple of different things. One, since due process is not a thing anymore, apparently, if you live within 100 miles of a border, which most Black people do in a lot of population centers, a lot of our biggest population centers are within 100 miles of a border. There's enhanced, they have enhanced powers where they may not always need a warrant for you to go through your stuff. They can detain you. It's dangerous to be in detention. Like, if you're a Black person, you're being detained by a white nationalist, you're in a pretty bad position. That's one. Two, a lot of cities around the United States used to have city hospitals that got shuttered in the 80s, 70s, and 80s and stuff, with a lot of Reaganomics stuff. And a lot of birth records, that there's a lot of Black folks that don't have easy access to their birth records. And I'm talking narrowly because that's narrowly who's affected by it. A lot of people who were born in those hospitals that are no longer open, that got shut down during Reaganomics, they have no easy access to their birth records. So if they don't have a birth certificate, there are so many hoops you got to jump through, that if you are in a detention, like if you're being detained and you have to prove that you were born in this country, it may be weeks or months before you're able to prove it, because the documentation don't exist, or it's not easily accessed. Hell, in order to get my birth records, I'm adopted. In order to get my birth records, I had to drive 50 miles just to get it. Like, they couldn't mail it. They couldn't, like, there was no email, there was no fax, no nothing. I had to drive 50 miles to physically go get it. Okay? So what happens is, for people of color, if somebody sees Latino as enemy or Black as suspect, it's escalation is the only path forward with that one. Okay? And these aren't small mistakes. These are power structures with guns and federal authority. So you're basically, we have a deputized force of white nationalists patrolling the country in a lot of marginalized communities. That's why this shit matters, y'all. So how fucked are we? I'm gonna say Red Dawn. that level where we have an occupying force that we can't get rid of, and they have the force of an entire government behind them. So the thing I said it last week: if you are in one of these cities, make sure, if you're a Black person or watch how you're moving around the city. Always keep your documentation on you. I know that I don't want to make, we shouldn't be Johannesburg in the 70s, but make sure you have your birth information on you at all times to prove that you are a citizen of this country. If you're a Black person, a Black American in one of these areas that is within 100 miles of a border area, go extra miles, take those extra steps, get your documentation, have it ready in case you get detained. Because They're not discriminating. Here's the thing: they're not discerning between this person is from the Caribbean, this person is from Somalia, this person is a Black American. They ain't differentiating, y'all. I'm just telling you, they're not going to stop and say, well, this person is an American citizen, a Black American. They're not doing that. You're going to get swept up in the same dragnet. So just be careful. Okay. Speaking of ideology, let's shift it up. Here's the thing. So one misinterpretation I see when I talk to Black folks who watch the Boondocks and white folks who watch the Boondocks. A lot of white folks think that Uncle Ruckus is like a caricature or an extreme version of a character. He represents the demographic of Black people. Uncle Ruckus is a demographic in and of himself. You see them like the Hodge twins. Like Hodge twins are like the analog. Cartier family, kind of in that same boat. Officer Brandon. He isn't an extreme. Ideologically, he's supposed to be the most extreme person on the Boondocks, but let's be honest with you, man. Uncle Ruckus isn't a caricature. He's not a send-up of a character. He's not an exaggerated version of a Black person who doesn't like other Black people. He's pretty on the nose. Like, and I think a lot of people misunderstand or misinterpret the character. Okay. Non-Black fans, some Black folks, I'm not casting that wide of a net, but non-Black fans think that Uncle Ruckus is satire or exaggerated. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me put Uncle Ruckus on the screen, bro. If you don't know, Uncle Ruckus is a character on the Boondocks. He represents the Black person that hates other Black people. That's really who he is. And that's his entire character arc. Every time he's on the screen, he's saying something super racist or inflammatory or derogatory about Black folks. Okay. And so the way they designed him, when they designed characters on the Boondocks, they always made it after a political figure. Like if they were an extreme, if they represented, like Jen and Rummy were essentially, if you watch the Boondocks and you were paying attention to politics, the way to design Jen and Rummy was George W. Bush and Donald Rumsfeld. And then they gave him Charlie Murphy and Samuel L. Jackson's voices. But they were represented political figures. So if we're talking about Uncle Ruckus, if you look at him, he looks like Clarence Thomas. And that was very intentional on their end. Okay. So when they designed Uncle Ruckus, he looks like Clarence Thomas. That's the perception. That was Aaron Magruder's perception of who Clarence Thomas was. Like I said, Uncle Ruckus ain't a caricature, bro. He's not a send-up. He's not an exaggerated version of a Black person. He is a type. And like I said, there are lots of Black folks online that make money disparaging Black folks, being the Black person that hates other Black folks for the benefit of white folks. Like that's kind of what he is. So they think he's exaggerated. They think he's satire. They think he's cartoonish. Nobody's really like that. Hold, please. We're going to pause here for a second, or maybe not. Hold on one second. And never mind. I thought I had a phone call I had to take. Anyway, so he's not this exaggeration, and I think people misinterpret what he is. They think nobody's really like that. Well, Black folks actually know us. We've seen Uncle Ruckus. We've experienced him. We're related to him in some cases. He's friends. He's family and stuff. Anti-Black commentators. RG3 plays in the Uncle Ruckus space. Sage still plays in the Uncle Ruckus space. They're analogs of him. Clout chasers who pander to white grievance culture. Any one of you weirdo niggas that are out here talking about Black fatigue and making it that white people are tired of Black people, not only have you hijacked that phrase, you need Joe ask. No, I'm just well, you do, but you are pandering to a white subsect of people who don't like you. They like you because you agree with them, but they hate you. You're the agreeable black friend for them. Okay. And so, creators who build platforms around blaming black people for systemic issues, or build a platform based on not knowing what the fuck they're talking about and have no concept of history and cause and effect. So the people I've already mentioned, Hodge twins, Fresh and Fit, Myron from Fresh and Fit, he's a big one. He thinks that was it Ethiopian or Somali, he thinks that makes him different, and that white people inherently see him as different than other black folks, and really don't. And they've checked him before for that. But he represents that caricature, that person. And so the reason why black people tend to define Uncle Ruckus hilariously funny is because we know him. We know him. We've experienced him. Okay. And it's not just him. There are all kinds of political commentators. You can build an entire platform on hating black people if you're a black person. And that's crazy. That's crazy work. But that one coworker who always sides with the racist bosses and it's kind of about self-preservation. That one black person that at your job that you know that you can't ever go to anything, the office snitch, or they'll always try to throw you under the bus or something. Okay. Uncle Ruckus resonates because he embodies internalized racism, survival mechanisms that turn toxic. The Passion of the Ruckus was a really good episode. It showed a lot of that internalized racism and stuff. How he imagined proximity to whiteness rewarded him, even though his dad said, he lives on a shack on the outside of town. But he thought that his imagined proximity to whiteness, with the revitiligo, he thought that a lot he was being celebrated by these same people, that he was worse off than anybody in that city. He's worse off than anybody in that suburb. Hands down. All the other black people were doing way better than he was, but he was the one who hated them the most. And colonial self-hatred and the belief that you're safer if you hate your own first. And here's the crazy part. Uncle Ruckus and Granddad were still kind of friends because Granddad knew. Invariably, Granddad knew. Okay. And other communities have their own versions of Uncle Ruckus, bro. I met Chicanos, I met Mexicans, Latinos, and stuff, that you should hear how they talk about people from Mexico or people from Puerto Rico. Like, they talk crazy, say the most vile stuff. There's colorism in all these communities, bro. And these are areas of nuanced conversations that a lot of white folks don't necessarily have the gear. They don't understand. Like, there's nuances within race, within racial groups and racial identity groups and stuff. There's nuances in the way that we interact with one another. And unfortunately, let me remove that. Oh, I'm still talking about Ruckus. I'll leave him on there. Unfortunately, or fortunately, you guys don't really know how that stuff works. And so it's interesting to see you process this. But when we start talking, like when I start talking about colorism, like when I start talking about Black Puerto Ricans, people, what do you mean Black Puerto Ricans? Yes, they're Afro Puerto Ricans. We talk about Haiti and the Dominican Republic. There's a lot of colorism there. The caste system in India has a lot of colorism driving it. Migrant communities that have immigrated from a lot of countries all over Asia, like Southern Asia and stuff like that, where skin tone does matter. You'll find the colorism there. And so you see it in those communities. LGBTQ people aligning with anti-LGBTQIA movements. Peter Thiel is a perfect example of that. He's a walking example of that. Immigrants, people that are children of immigrants that are attacking newer immigrant communities. Look at what's happening down in Florida, where the Cubans that have been in Florida don't really like the Cubans that are coming from Cuba to Florida. Beef, y'all. And then whatever the diaspora, I can never say it. Diaspora. A lot of the diaspora wars that are happening on Twitter internally. And I don't want to say it's wars, like it's a very fringe group of black people that do this shit. Where they take it on this super nativist, super xenophobic kind of stance towards immigrant communities or children of immigrants. And they've said that they're not black and all this other weird shit. It's a fringe group that doesn't realize that they were birthed because of that doesn't necessarily realize that a lot of the stuff that they're doing was actually funded early 2000s by some right-wing conservative think tanks. And so a lot of their movement was born from white nationalist money, and they're not aware of it. And if you try to tell them that, they'll fight you to the ground on it. But I've done the research. I'm a journalist, I've done the research. I have the documentation. I know where this stuff comes from. All right. And so you find it where the self-hating person from the group, from the marginalized group, that is a common thing. And a lot of white folks don't necessarily understand it. But what I'm saying is Uncle Ruckus is not Uncle Ruckus. He isn't exaggerated. He's not a caricature of a black person. He actually represents a demographic or specific type of black person that you encounter, that we encounter all time online. And now they're visible because now they have the ability to weaponize and monetize their hatred of black people. So that's what I got, y'all. I'm about to get off this stream. I got a chance to talk about comic books. I got a chance to talk about current events. I didn't get a chance to do the Ask a Dad stuff. I got more questions for next week that I got for the show next week. Next week, I'll probably have a breakdown of Absolute Batman and whatever else drops this week. I did want to do a review of Absolute Green Lantern this week, but it wasn't a bad issue. But to me, not a lot happened. It was more of an interpersonal story with Jo and kind of going through her history with Sojourner and going through her history and stuff. And so there wasn't a lot to talk about with that one. So, but yeah, I'll do a breakdown of Absolute Batman next week. And that's what I got. I appreciate y'all tuning in. I'm gonna get at y'all later. Peace. Well, hold on a second. Now I'm gonna get at y'all later. Peace.